What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Welcome back to the channel where we do nothing but paint. This video is going to be another different one, as I have been working slowly but surely on the 2000 Civic that I'm redoing. That's mine. So quickly, what we're going to do over this is I'm going to show you guys, explain what I did, how far along we are right here, and tell you guys what else needs to be finished to get this back to normal and ready for body work, primer, paint, things like that. So what I pretty much did, if you guys haven't watched the video, I first explained and I showed the videos and pictures of what this looked like before I repaired this and cut it out. Go back and watch those, please, because it's just going to make more sense now, rather than coming to this video and you're going to be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So go back and watch that first. I think it's 2 or 3 videos from this one. It's not too far down the line, but yeah, on this part, on the quarter, we had some really bad rust. And what happened was whoever repaired this did a really not really a good job at all. They burnt in the body line right here. You can see, I don't know if you guys see that line, but it's pretty much been painted. And then what happens is they'll hardline this or roll it right here on this edge, and they'll clear all the way up to it, and they'll do like a reduced clear with some reducer in it and just kind of smoke that in to make it to where it's not there, like visible. 9 times out of 10 people would not notice this, but I noticed it when I bought it. So I knew that something in this quarter panel had been repaired before, because I see this a lot with used cars lots that are trying to like flip cars really quick. They're trying to fix something that's really nasty and just get it done really cheap and just not doing a good job. So it's all over this car. That's why I've decided to actually redo it and try to do like an early 2000s build on it. Not that it already isn't, but I'm going around and cleaning up this whole car and making it just back to where it should be and just a lot cooler. So, and the car had some really bad rust popping up. So what we did was we grinded it down. Noticed that it had filler, fiberglass, and then once I got down to the metal, it was all black. And usually what that indicates is the metal was not cut out. They put some type of preventative rust promoter in there to kind of stop the rust, hoping that would work. And then what they did, they just kind of half-assed it, put some fiberglass over it, smoothed it, body filler, primer, painted it, and sent it out the door. Well, what happens is down the line, moisture, everything gets in this quarter panel. That's why these cars rust out so often, is because moisture gets inside the panel, it leaks from the factory. These cars have like a weather strip that goes along here, and what that does, it traps the water in here when it runs down, and they get in between the 2 panels that are spot welded. I don't know if you can see that, but you can see the spot welds. Every factory car is like this almost. Some are rolled, most of them are spot weld around here, and what that does is it traps the water and the moisture, and it causes the dog legs, wheel well area on these Hondas to rust out really quick. So what I did was I went ahead and cut out as much as I can, getting it back down to pretty much metal that is not soft. That's another thing when you're doing anything with rust. You're really not supposed to repair rust, you're supposed to replace it. In this case, I didn't want to track down a used quarter for this, because used panels are definitely not fun to work with, especially on older cars like this. It's hard to find a good one. So what I did is cut it out, cleaned up the metal around it, and made sure that every piece that was rusted or soft, anything like that, was cut out. Because what's going to happen with rust is it's like cancer, it just spreads. So if you don't get all that out, you don't clean up really good, you don't put the right stuff over it before you start welding in your panels or panel, whatever you're going to do to it, it's just going to rust right back out, just a matter of time. So what I did is I tried to do as much as I could with what I know on how to do this. I've done it many times in the past, and it's worked really well. So I cut it out, and I went through, and I've got a piece of metal that I've cut up, and I pretty much just made a template out of paper, and I just went in and started templating everything out, cutting it out on the new piece of metal. Stole some from work that we had a car in there, didn't a quarter panel. Got some scrap metal, really good E-coat on it, so it's factory. It's not really beat up. It's really, really clean metal. That's another thing you want to look for. You don't want to use like old scrap metal that's been laying around that's got already been rusting. You want to use fresh metal that's really, really good. And I just went around and I cut this out, and I didn't get, what I did here is I tried to get it as flush as possible. I took my time and actually got it to where it sat in there perfectly without having a lip and without being a backing. A backing, a lot of people will do is just make it big enough and then put it on the back side of the panel where you're going to, and just kind of either weld it, rivet, whatever, to make it stick to the quarter. And then what happens is you really got a deep spot to fill. And I didn't want that. I didn't want to cake this thing on with fiberglass. I wanted it to be as smooth as possible. That way I don't have a lot of body work to do, and I don't want anything happen down the road to this. So I pretty much butted it up against each other and started using panel bond. Obviously I cleaned the metal really well before. Not stick to anything but bare metal. It's this stuff right here. It's really, really good stuff. It'll stop, you know, like I said, it's got to be bare metal for this stuff to stick. So you got to go around, grind all your edges, make sure everything's pretty much almost bare metal with a 36 grit. Clean it up really well. I usually put some lacquer thinner on a rag and wipe it down before I put this on, just to clean it a little bit extra. Get all that oily grease out of there. And then what I did was here, and I still just lightly put coats and coats over top of it. And you want to make your area on the outside big enough, a couple inches from where you're doing, because you want it to really bond to the panel. And not only do that outside, you want to do the inside of the quarter panel too. So I was able to get really, really good access to the back side of this panel. And that's what I started with first, was actually adding some back. And once you get, this stuff is really thick and tacky, so once you get a little bit of layers, it just kind of holds there pretty much. And then you can just kind of go where you need to go and just put it on. Don't take much. You just need like a little paintbrush or something to kind of smear it on there. It doesn't have to be perfect, because what we're going to do is we're going to grind this back down flat, do a little bit of fiberglassing, do a little bit of body work, getting all these body lines back to right where they need to be. But yeah, and also on the inside, show you guys this right here. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I had to do the inside of the panel as well. So I actually did the inside first because it was easier to get to than doing the outside and then doing the inside. I was really able to get that stuff in the very back of that and get it really sealed in there really nice. And as you can tell, I just kind of took everything down to bare metal where I needed it, a couple inches out, and just cleaned it really good, stuck it on there, made it sure it was flush. Did some body work to kind of actually get the metal to be the shape. Took some time to do that and shape it out really good to get as close as I can. Same way with the inside. And then I panel bonded over top of it. And then I built this lip. Still got a little bit of work left to do. As you can see right here, I was not able to finish that. And then I did this piece the very last. I did this last because I needed to tape it to hold it for one, and I needed it to be as flush as possible with this. That way this arch is almost perfect. So I needed to grind this down a little bit right here, grind it a little bit in here on this edge, add just a little bit more here, maybe kind of beat this up a little bit. It's pretty close, but it does have a little hump right there. So I'll take a hammer and dolly that as flat as I can, put some on there, let it dry. This stuff, I usually let it dry for 24 hours. That's really, really good. It gets really, really hard, but it's sandable. You can see I've already started to sand it with some 86 grit, but I'll take a 36 grit grinder and just grind it off and get it as flat as possible. But yeah, you make sure you want to let this stuff sit for at least 12 hours if you're like in 80 degrees, somewhere around there, to get it really, really hard. But I always wait at least 24 hours just because I go to work, and by the time I come off work the next day, it's been 24 hours. So, but yeah, that's what I've been working on, as well as the brakes. The brakes on this thing was terrible. I ordered a steel braid line kit, as you can see right there. I don't have any of it really zip tied or hanging anywhere from underneath of it. Like I said, it's just hanging here. You can kind of tell. But it's all brand new stainless steel line, which is really good. and it was cheap enough just to do it, but it was nasty. This stuff was brittle. It was nasty. Back in the back end of the car was really hard to get to because a lot of it was ran underneath the gas tank. But this is what it was. Try to repair from before a couple years ago, and you can see already how rusted it was. But it's just a really nasty job to get all this out. But we got it done. We got everything ran. All the sides are done. Everything is bled. The brakes work perfectly. It came with everything from the master cylinder to the bleeder that holds all the lines, and then all the lines ran. You got to run them all yourself. It wasn't hard once we got it all apart. Like I said, this is a kit. They come all together, and it's labeled perfectly. It's real easy to do. So if you got an old Honda, you know, Integra, anything like that, you need brake lines, this kit is probably the best one for your money. It's just really easy to install. So I'm gonna do this thing. I noticed when I was underneath the car was the fuel line. The fuel line is almost as bad as the brake line was. It was just kind of brittle. The outside of it's just kind of falling apart. So the same company makes a fuel line kit for these cars, so I ordered it. It's really cheap, so that's the next thing I'll replace on this. And it's pretty much going to be a nasty job as well, because I got to lower the tank, get all that old stuff, that old line out. It'll go from the tank all the way to the factory up here inside the back firewall, and it's all stainless steel as well, steel braided line. So we'll do that and we'll get it done. But for now, I'm going to start working on grinding this down. All you really need is a 36-inch angle grinder. We'll grind this down really quick, get it really smooth. I've got a little bit of this left in here, so I'll mix a little bit of this up, and we'll get it smeared on here, let it dry, let it sit. And then after I get that done, I will go around the car. There's many things on this car that need fixed as far as bodywork goes. Got a little dent right here. Got a little guy right here. Got a pretty nasty Audi right there. It's nothing too major. Got some in the roof that need to be hammer and dollied out, and then I can do a little bit of body work to it. It's nothing major to where it's going to need a bunch of body work. I can almost probably hammer and dolly this stuff out, put a little bit of glaze on it, sand it smooth, and then get it ready for primer. Well, with this car is to get it in primer by the end of the month. So I think it's what, the 21st today, 22nd, something like that. And get the body of the car to where it's ready to be primered. Like I said, there's not much on this car that needs done. It's a very, very clean car. From looking at the dents and things, there's probably a good, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 dents that are really small that need hammer and dollied out. I'm probably going to have to drop, oh, there's an eagle. There's an eagle out here. He's never been that close. Pretty cool though. But like I said, the dents are really, really tiny in this car, so I'll probably have to drop the headliner. I'll do a hammer and dolly on everything, get it as flat as possible, and then I can almost probably block it smooth or get a little bit of glaze and put some glaze on it and then block it and primer it. But the front of the fenders go, they're pretty much still new. There's some rock chips in them that I need to get out just around like the headlight areas that since they're driving it. The front bumper is another case. It needs torn off. There's a lot of rock chips. There's a lot of little things I need to fix. There's a lot of fabrication work to get this thing to fit better. The grill is going to get trashed. I'm not even going to try to use that again, but to get these gaps on this fender to look better, there's going to be some finagling to get this car to looking a lot better than what it was. And then hopefully by the time I'm ready to primer, I'm wanting to really let this metal, this quarter panel sit for a little bit, just because I want to see what it does. It's never, ever, all the times I've used panel bond instead of actually welding in a piece of metal. I do that because, one, I don't have a welder here. Two, when you're welding, it just creates You know, it's a mess sometimes, and you're creating a weld through the panel, being right there to the gas door. It's really unsafe to do that close to the gas door. You don't want to ignite anything. You want to tear all that stuff out. I didn't want to do that. I panel bonded this stuff many times before. It's quicker. It's easier to work with. You can get stuff a lot cleaner. What welding does is it warps the panel. Obviously, it's in there permanently, but it also, there's no protection in between those panels when you start doing that. So that's why I panel bonded it. I want to make sure all that rust, everything is gone. It's never going to come back. I'm going to show you guys one thing too with the trunk. I'm going to show you guys exactly what this trunk situation is. You can see I've got it pretty much, I had to grind all this out, and I pretty much got all this all covered. That was nasty. Now, I haven't checked the other side. That's just a drain tube right there, but you can kind of see how far I've went. And I honestly need to go back and try to fit more back in here. It's just really hard to get back in there. So with the little bit of left I have, I need to get back in there and look at it and put some more. But as you can see, this side is not far gone. It's close to being needing. It definitely needs some work. So I might have to grind this back down, do the same thing. It's just this car is so pretty much rusted almost. It's pretty bad. So all this stuff needs fixed, obviously. This side's not bad. It's pretty normal. This side, on the other hand, I just need to grind this stuff down, fix it, repair it, whatever I need to do to get this back before it gets even worse. Because once it gets further than this, stuff starts to crumble. Not that it already isn't, but right now I could probably clean this metal up really nice, put some preventative rust on it, let it sit, put some of the epoxy on it or more of this panel bond stuff to really clean it up and get away with not doing another section. Because down the road, it's just going to be a matter of time. This stuff is just going to come back and it's going to look like what that side looked like. So if I can get to it soon enough, stop majority all the rust. That's pretty much all the rust. I mean, the rear body has some, but it's just kind of surface rust. So when I take this thing, I can go through and grind all that out and clean all that up as well. But as far as the rest of the car, this was the quarter was the only rust spot besides the inside of that trunk. Like I said, we're going to fix, but that's the only rust. I mean, I'm going to get to work on this thing, and I'll show you guys some progress updates and what it looks like with this stuff actually grounded down. Give you an idea, if you've never done this type of stuff, what you need to do. If you got some rust of your own, you're just trying to fix it for now, this is a good way to do it. So I'm going to get to working on this stuff. I'm going to show you guys what happens when you don't properly prep, seal a paint job. This bumper had come in, paint was flaking off of it, got down to pretty much blew everything off, all the paint blew right off, everything, nothing actually stuck. There was a little bit of primer underneath of it, but what happened was this bumper had been stripped before, glazed a little bit, fixing rock chips, things like that, and it looked like they had primed it with like one coat of primer, and then they sanded it, and then they painted right over it without sealing it, and that ended up causing the paint to flake off. So the primer stuck to it, all the bodywork underneath of it stuck to it, but the paint and the clear, it flew right off of it. So what we did, we had to strip the entire bumper all the way back down, because you can't trust any type of work that's flaking off. So you want to strip it all back down, back to the plastic. Try not to ruin the plastic too much. You don't want to use like 80 grit or anything when you do this. Try to stay in like the 220, 180 range. And then I usually, after the body guy gets done with it, I usually take 400 and then 600 wet on a DA to really get the fuzzies out. That's a little bit of a trick. If you didn't know that, take some glass cleaner, spray the heck out of it, let it soak for a minute, take a DA with 600 on it, and just buzz it down. It'll get rid of all the fuzzy plastics that you kind of have if you have anything breaking through, things like that. It'll get rid of that and it'll make it smooth again. And then you dry it off really well, put your adhesion promoter on it, and then you can then prime it again, bake it, sand it. And here's where we are right now. Both of these pieces look like they had been repaired, just not repaired properly. So I've already the body guy's already sanded it down. I primed it yesterday, I baked it, and here's the next day. I've already got it sanded back down, clean, tacked off, ready to put some sealer down, and then we'll paint it. Just a little friendly reminder that if you do not seal your stuff, it's not going to stick for very long. It might work for, you know, half a month, a year, maybe 2 years, depending. But in the long run, you take a pressure washer to it or anything like that, paint will not stick for a very long time, especially when you don't put the right steps down. So that's another reason why I always seal stuff. A lot of guys think you could just paint right over primer and things like that. You know, this right here just tells you that you really cannot do that. You gotta be really, really good, not burn through your edges and things like that. You gotta use the right products and just do it right. Just take your time and do it right. There's no sense of stuff like this coming back. You know, this was done a long, long time ago before I even worked here, but it just shows you that stuff like this will come back because there will be issues down the road. So just keep that in mind. So we got the sealer on, let it dry, flash off, tacked it off. Then we put some silver down. It's K23, it's a Nissan bumper. And then it's drying right now. And then I'll re-tack it back off and we'll throw some clear on it. When you're, me personally, I always tack off every time I seal after it's dry, base coat after it's dry, and then right before I clear it, I tack it off again. Just because any type of overspray that was in the air that might have landed on top when it was drying, it will create a rough spot. So what you want to do is tack it off. It'll help get some of that roughness overspray off top of it with the tack rag, and you want this stuff to be smooth as possible before you clear it. That way when you clear it, it's smooth. If it's not, you'll tell really quickly because it'll be like kind of rough, and then you'll have to bury it. And then sometimes when you bake it, it'll come back up because when the clear starts drying, you'll start to see it come through the clear, and then you'll have to wet sand and buff it. So always make sure your base coat is really, really smooth. And with that, you always want to make sure that your sealer is smooth as well, because if anything's rough underneath, when you go to clear it, it will definitely come through and you'll see it. A lot of times you can't bury it depending on what clear you use. If you got like a high solids clear, you can bury it. But if you're working at one of those shops or using a cheaper material, then you'll have problems because that stuff is really water thin, and you'll definitely not be able to bury it unless you put a ton of coats of clear on it, and that time you're just wasting paint materials, especially when you're doing this collision stuff. So I want to show you guys right before I clear it. I'm gonna go look at my spray out before I do clear it, before I tack it off, make sure this is right with the car, and then we'll come back in and we'll get it cleared. So Jose got the bumper off. To get it off, to look at that side right here to see how rusted it was. It's actually not too bad. There's really no soft spots. Usually you got to really worry about inside of here, but since it hasn't made its way to the quarter yet, it's really solid. But the back bumper, I've had this off before because the rebar is actually falling off on me. It was so rusted out, as you can tell by the end caps here. They're just gone. So I need to get those cut out. There's bolts in here I'm gonna get to. They're rusted as well, so that's gonna be fun to actually get those out, and they'll slide right out. But this is the rear body. It's not as bad as what I remembered. Obviously you got some surface stress and stuff down here. These brackets that the bumper snap into need to be cleaned up. There's a soft spot right there, but I think that'll grind out, which is fine, and then bend all this back up to where it needs to be, like this side, and get this all cleaned up. Same way with the ones underneath the tail light pocket area, and get all that stuff cleaned up. A lot of this stuff will clean up on a DA once I get to sanding on it, and then we'll squirt some rust preventer on it and work our way from there and clean up the inside of the trunk. So about an hour, 10 minutes later, I've got everything pretty much finished up. Gonna let it dry, like I said, 24 hours. I didn't put much on the quarter panel this time because there's very little that I needed to touch up and fill in, but I'm gonna let it dry, come back tomorrow. Those are pretty much 24 hours, and then finish grinding it, block it down really good. Then I can start doing the body work with the fiberglass and things like that. But I'm going to show you guys what I did to everything else. This is the quarter panel that I kind of had to finish up because, like I said, I had to tape it to the panel itself. So I had some air pockets, if you will, in there from the tape. So I grinded it all back down, got it all nice and even, nice and smooth. What you want to do on these wheel arches, you want to make sure it's nice and even. So you want to make sure you have the bumper on when you do this. That way you can line the bumper up to make sure everything is nice and even. And when it bolts up, when you get done with it, it's going to match perfectly. So you want to leave all that stuff on there before you take it off. I've already taken the bumper off like I showed you guys for the rear body and stuff. But on the inside here, what I pretty much did was I took the grinder, a 36-inch grinder, and I grinded all this out. Luckily, everything pretty much shined up really, really nice. Got a lot of that metal that was on top that was rusted off of it. But the good indicator is that it came up really shiny, so it cleaned off all that rust, that surface rust that was built up. So I did that to the wheel well as well as the inside panel here of the wheel well. And then what I did was I took some of the same stuff I used here to actually slow down the rust and stop it, and it'll turn it black if you let it sit, and then you can do like epoxy on top of it or your body work or whatever you need to do on top of it. But you're supposed to let this stuff sit for a little bit as well to let it do what it does. So I usually, like I said, wait a day for this stuff. But it's a Sim rust seal. So you want to do is you want to kind of spray it. It comes in a sprayer form, so you want to spray it on there. I literally just took the cap off and I just kind of just dumped it. As you can tell, it's not really pretty, but I dumped it, let it sit for a little bit. I did the same thing over here. I got really good back in the back where I could not reach, and I just dumped the crap out of it, let it run all the way through to the bottom of the floor. Yes, it looks ugly, but like I said, I let it sit for about 10-15 minutes to where it was almost drying up on me. And then what I did after that, further, because I'm really trying to stop this stuff from coming back again. So of our sealer black surface over here, and I mix them up with hardener and a little bit, don't take much, a little bit of reducer, especially when you're doing something like this. You want to make it thicker than normal. And I stuck it in a bottle like this, shook it up, and I was able to squirt it out. I was able to get this bottle really far back there and just squirt the crap out of it on both sides, and I just let it run wherever it needs to run. Because you really want this stuff to go in the cracks where you cannot see and reach, and you really want it to just go where it needs to go and let it just drip out on the floor, because that means it's going through all these channels where you cannot see and getting all that nasty stuff that you cannot reach. So that's really good. So I'm going to let this stuff dry, like I said, 24 hours. It does the same thing on this side. It just leaked out of everywhere. Because like I said, from the factory, all they do is just pinch weld these. So I bet that sealer ran all the way through here and all the way down to here, all the way in this pinch weld area. And you just want this stuff to let it just drip. Usually I'll do this after a car is painted. What we usually use that, the body guys, once I get it painted and it's done baking, the next day they'll get cavity wax. And cavity wax comes in like an aerosol. You get like a really long wand with it. And it allows you to reach inside of quarter panels and stuff that we've cut off, replaced, anything that needs damage or section, rocker panels or anything like that. wand and we fish it through there, and we just squirt the crap out of it with this cavity wax. And I'll do that at the very end when I get this thing done painted. I'll cavity wax the crap out of it, and you just want to let that stuff drip for over, at least a day, and just let it drip, get really tacky. It's going to get into the places that you will not be able to get to yourself. And this is the same as and that sim stuff. I put a little bit of that sim stuff in here as well because it is a liquid form. So I mix the two with the sealer. I don't know if it's going to react or whatever, but I don't care because it's in the trunk. And when I get this car ready to be painted, this whole trunk's going to be tore apart. It's going to be open. I don't even know if I'll have the coilovers in it at this time, but I'm going to let overspray just hit all that. So all that stuff's going to be hidden when it gets repainted because it's just going to get covered with paint anyway. So right now I don't care. It's there for a purpose to help prevent any more rust from happening. Get in all those little cracks, let it seep down inside of them, and just let it do its thing. It's really not that hard. It takes more time than it does actually a skill, because you just want to make sure you get all that bad rust cut out, everything grinded down, clean. Like I said, I always clean my stuff with a little bit of lacquer thinner, and then I'll let it dry, obviously evaporate out, and then I'll start gluing this stuff in. But I'm really happy with the way it's coming out. It's looking really, really good. So only time's gonna tell, guys. Like I said, I'm gonna start doing the little bodywork things around the car as far as the dents and stuff. But other than the hard stuff, it's done. That quarter panel, I was kind of afraid to see what was underneath of it because you just never know. It was really bubbled up really bad, and I knew from that instant, I knew that there was either a lot of fiberglass or a lot of body filler just caked in that quarter panel, because that's what happens. It's not really necessarily the metal that gets really bubbly, it's the stuff underneath of it reacting to the metal, and it'll start getting bubbly and start poking out. It's usually the paint. So, but I'm glad I got that done. Glad it wasn't anything major, because if it was, if they had the whole backside of the quarter and the wheel arch area that needed to be redone, I would probably honestly just order a quarter panel for it and just cut the whole quarter off and dealt with whatever was on the inside, dealt with that as well. Because I did find out, I was searching for a little bit on Google and eBay, you can get the quarter panel OEM still for these cars, but the downfall is it's like $1,400. So it's not cheap to do it, and that's why I was debating on just wide body in the car, because I can still get fiberglass quarter panel wide body parts for this thing. You can actually get whole kits for this car still, which is really cool, and they're relatively cheap, so I'm still debating on whether I should do that or not. But if I do that, the kit that I'm looking at, that I've seen in person that I like, you have to do the whole kit almost. You have to do comes with the fender, that are totally replaceable fenders. They're fiberglass, which I hate fiberglass fenders because they never fit worth a crap. And then it comes with like a door skin that covers from the body line down. It comes with the side skirts, and it comes with the quarter panel, which comes from the body line down, and obviously the gas door's got an area for it to be cut out. And then it comes with these spats for the rear bumper that kind of get molded into the bumper as well. So it comes with the whole kit for like less than $700, which is really crazy. But usually kits are thousands of dollars. But being an old company and an old car like this, I'm sure they're trying to get rid of product, because like I said, this stuff you don't see anymore, which is the reason why I want to do this car. I want to kind of do it correctly. It might not be everybody's taste. It might not be everybody's taste because it does have that kind of ricer look to it. But this is what we did back in the day, back when I was in high school. This is what we did. Some people put full body kits on, but me and a couple other guys, I seen guys putting just bumpers on cars and doing like the headlights and the hoods and the wheels and the spring, all the little stuff that you can bolt onto a car and get away with it still looking good. Because it's not as gaudy to me personally if you don't do the whole kit. Usually those whole kits, depending on which one you get, they're really bulky, they don't really fit really well, so people really didn't put the time and money into them getting to fit really well. But if you just do a bumper on these cars, whether it be like a fiberglass or a USB bumper like this one's not fiberglass. This is actually, it's a plastic bumper that's really, really heavy. That's why it sags so much, so I need to take it off and reinforce it. But you do something small like that, and put new headlights in it, a new grille, tint the windows, wheels, coilovers, and you know, maybe tail lights like I did, but it changes a whole car just by doing those little things. And that's what we did back in school, was, you know, the people that did have the Hondas or the Acuras, this is what we did to them, mainly the Honda guys. And it worked really, really well. And you didn't have to get into doing a lot of body work with those body kits, because you know, you can spend thousands of dollars at a body shop getting a full body kit put on because they just don't fit right. So you get all the body work, the mock-up time, and then the paint. And usually if you paint bumpers, side skirts, anything like that, that's going to change the whole car, you want to do the quarters in it. So you're pretty much painting the whole car at the end of the day. And that's why we kind of stayed away from it. We just did a really simple but yet effective look to it. These taillights are awesome as well. A lot of people probably don't like them, but I don't care. They are pretty much like I call a period correct taillight. Headlights the same way, but yeah, like I said, I'm gonna still decide debating if I want to do all that or if I want to just wait, keep it a stock body, fix the bumper, fix everything else, and just make this thing a really clean stock body car, or wide body it. So you guys let me know in the comments what you think. If you're in the younger crowd, you probably don't understand, you probably don't care, you probably think it looks stupid. But if you're an older guy, you know, mid to late 30s, 40s, this is the stuff that we grew up around. This is stuff that was really hot back in the day, and a lot of the stuff is just going away. Don't really find it anymore. If you do, it's usually ragged out or rusted out, kind of like this one was getting to be. But with saving this car, I think this is going to be one of those ones that's going to last a really long time. That's why I decided to keep it. But we also got the wheels, as you saw in the beginning of the video. Got the tires mocked up on here. They just need cleaned. They're really, really clean though when they're cleaned up. They've just been sitting on this car for a long time. So, but yeah, I plan to use these wheels with this build. Now, if we do a wide body, obviously we're gonna either have to get a wider wheel, because the wide body is gonna stick out like 25 to 50 millimeters, depending how wide of a body we do. So we're either have to do like some type of bigger wheel, a wider wheel, spacers, or something, because these wheels are going to tuck inside that and it will not look right. So I kind of want to keep a stock body just for that reason, because I want to use these wheels, because these things are really cool. They're an old school wheel. They're pretty cheap wheels. So if you're looking for a cheap wheel for your Honda, they're really not expensive. And you know, they're that generic black and chrome look, but like I said, back in the day, this black and with the polished lip was really, really popular. So pretty much everybody had them, but nowadays everybody's like the black wheel with the polished look. So it's just coming along slowly, guys. But yeah, I'll keep updating you guys, and we'll go from there. And as far as the art stuff that's been selling, the big canvas portrait of Pennywise is claimed. It's been called for. They're supposed to come this weekend to pick it up, so that one's getting sold. And then there's another one I can't think off the top of my head that's been claimed. But if you're wanting any type of artwork or anything like that, go through the last couple of videos. I kind of had everything laid out, and just shoot me an offer on them, because things are selling fast. They're not going to be around forever. I'm just trying to clean out my area, get it to a little bit more cleaner. Some of the stuff I've had it for a little bit, so I'm just trying to eliminate the clutter in my shop and get things back to normal, and then get this car done and get everything else rolling out. And oh yeah, before I forget, the PS5 cover, I'll put a clip in here of what it looks like. I have not cleared that yet, so if you've been watching the PS5 cover panel that I painted and I airbrushed, go back and watch that video. Or if you've already watched it, just an update on that is I got it done. I let it sit for a little bit. I was going to clear it, but I decided to stick it on the PS5 just to see what it would look like. You know, it looks a little bit different being on the stand in the house versus just in pieces sitting by itself. So I put it on there. You know, I was playing it for a little bit, and I'm going to keep it on there without clearing it, just to see if I like it or not. I don't really know right now, so I'm going to give it a week or two, keep it on there. You know, if I end up liking it, I'll take it back apart. It's not hard. They clip right off and push right out, so they come apart real easily. I'll clear it, and I'll show you guys that video, but if not, I can actually take some wax and grease and just wipe all the paint off of it, kind of scuff it back up a little bit to get it all off if I need to. Because my thinking is, it looks really cool, especially with it being powered on. That blue matches that LED blue that's in that PlayStation 5 really, really well. But it's almost borderline too much, if that makes any sense, especially for what we have set up right next to it. It's just really far, it's really bright, and it's really just far out there as far as that blue color. So my thinking is I just may mix up, you know, wipe it off, clean it, leave the green and the purple still on it, but clean it again, print some more stencils out, maybe make them a little bit smaller, and then take some pearl blue, some blue pearl that I've got here. I've got some on this rack right here. Yeah, this blue FX right here. Take some of this and put it in some wet bed down there, and just kind of ghost it in to that green. That way it's there, because where our gaming systems are set up, the sun comes through that window during the midday, so it really shines everything up right there. So I'm thinking if I put it in there kind of like a ghost pearl, where you can barely see it, but when that sun hits it, you can see the flop, and you can kind of make out what it says. Do that way it's really subtle, because like I said, right now it's kind of really, really bright. I don't know if I'm going to be able to live with it for a very long time like that. I may end up redoing it after a year or two, so I'm trying to prevent that. So like I said, I'm going to let it sit there for a couple weeks and kind of decide if I want to do it, you know, if I clear it or not. So once I clear it, it's pretty much game over. If I'm going to redo it, I got to redo the whole thing. But right now, with it not being re-cleared, especially artwork, I can sand it off, clean it up, and do something else on it. So that's it, guys. So thank you for watching the video. If you got any ideas on the Civic build or anything like that, like I said, I'm trying not to make this a car content page, but they seem to do pretty well. So if you guys like this type of content, let me know. We got some parts coming for this thing, some body work, start tearing the car down, start getting I'm going to cut the windows out of this thing, seam seal it. The seam sealer and the back half of this car is really rotted, so it leaks water in the trunk. So I needed to cut all that out, re-seam seal the back of it, and just get everything pretty much tidied up on this car before it gets painted. But and all honestly, if I worked on this thing for a full week, I could probably have this thing pretty close to get it in either primer or get it ready for paint, as far as getting it prepped and stuff like that. So I could get this thing knocked out really, really quick if I really wanted to. But I've got all winter, so just let me know in the comments. Appreciate you guys watching. See you next time.